Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. For today's video, I wanted to go over my experience unmasking a covert sociopathic malignant narcissist. So let's jump in. My experience unmasking the covert sociopathic narcissist, we had done several cycles over several years, and it had gotten very destructive. I mean, she's the most destructive person I ever met in my life. Now, of course, it didn't start out that way. It started out great and in the fantasy, right? Just like all y'all have experienced. And then from there, all the stacking of manipulations and all of the insidious ways that they act and maneuver, you eventually see yourself almost completely destroyed. And one time we had ended a cycle. I had always usually broke up with her because she would be so evil and destructive. She'd cheat on you and all kind of stuff. I had broke up with her. I guess it was like a first discard when they force you to break up with them because they don't have the guts to do it. And then they can play the victim card. And that's pretty much what she would do every time. That way, when you break up with them, it's not like they feel like you got over on them because they caused it. They know that. But they could also play the victim during this period of time when they're away from you with a new source supply. It would usually be like 3 to 4 weeks. I'd be fine because its recovery time with this individual was like horrendous. So like the next 3 or 4 weeks, I was happy that I wasn't around this individual. But then after, that trauma bond would kick in and you would get to that addiction point from the hot and cold and all the endocrine system going up and down and changing. At this particular time, it had been like 3 or 4 weeks. And I started to try to figure out, it started hitting me and I was ruminating and it started to hit me, well, what the heck am I dealing with here? Because I've dealt with this before. These patterns of over and over again, and they're very similar. I noticed that they were very similar, but this was several levels up from the last ones that I've had. So I started Googling, and the last thing she had told me when we broke up was, I'm tired of your bipolar ass. So that was running through my head. So I said, well, let me look up bipolar, because you do start to act like a bipolar when you're around these individuals because of the way they make you fluctuate from all of the insidious behaviors that they implant in you and around you and on you, and how they devise evil against you. And they look like bipolars, really. So I started to Google and look into bipolar. Then I landed on narcissism. I didn't know anything about it outside of the overt type narcissist, where they're just a pompous jerk or whatever. And I started to realize that she had run patterns like whoever it was I was listening to. It might have been Dr. Romney or something like that, which I'm not a big fan of. But I would watch a lot of her stuff, and then, I would bounce around a little bit, started, looking up stuff, reading stuff and all kind of things, because I started to realize the patterns were the same of what these people were telling me. And so it was very fascinating to me that they are running on these tracks, and mine's like yours is like his, and his is like somebody else's. So I was studying that, and then I was at work one day. It hit me when I was walking that, and my inside voice told me, or said, am I dealing with a demon in a meat suit? And I started to dwell on that for a minute, and I couldn't grab my phone fast enough and look that up. And when I did, psychological stuff didn't pop up anymore. It was all dealing with people that saw black eyes and talked about demonic entities and how they were demonically possessed, and they've seen all kind of different things. And so I started to look into both the psychological and the psycho-spiritual side of this. And what made me get on this is we got into an argument, well, several arguments, where it's kind of like at the end, you're just like, whatever, because you never come to any kind of agreement or any kind of stance on anything. Well, you have a stance on it, but you can't get any information out of them. They turn everything into word salad. And then it ends up a breakup or something because you gave them a narcissist injury or something. But we had gotten into this one particular argument that it was so thick, it was completely spiritual. I was really messed up after it. and it was beyond like a psychological level. And I realized that humanity cannot argue like this. It's too perfect in an evil way. That's what kind of got me thinking, which led up to, am I dealing with a demon in a meat suit? That's what my inside voice told me. And then I started to look into these things. And what kind of helped me prepare for some of this stuff, or why I know some of this information a little bit, is because I went to seminary school. I got saved when I was 20. And then I also studied like Genesis 6, where fallen angels came mated with human women and caused big giants in the land. They were the men of renown, the men of old, the men of renown, and they were the size of cedar trees. It talks about in the Word of God, and also all these megaliths that you see over the face of the earth, like the pyramids and Machu Picchu and Teotihuacan or whatever it's called. There's all these spots, right? And they're megaton stones that maybe are 15 tons, just one stone. And, I listen to these Christian anthropologists that would talk about how they would always find giants around these areas, the bones of them. And they have 6 fingers, 6 toes, double sets of teeth, elongated skulls with 2 parietal plates instead of 3. And they were known as being reptilian because when you read the book of Enoch, you find that the fallen angels that came down and mated with the human women were a group of watcher angels, and they were all seraphim angels. And so that's why you get these reptilian type attributes from them, because they were half reptilian angelic host, fallen, and then half human, which is called sons and daughters of man, is what we're called. They are called sons of God, even whether they've fallen or not, because in their perfect form, they were created in their perfection before they fell. So there's only a few individuals that are called a son of God, has that label, and that would be angelic host, fallen angels, because they were once in perfection before they fell. Adam is considered a son of God because he was made in his perfection before he fell, and Jesus Christ. And that's because he is everything. He was the Son of Man, Yahshua in the flesh, the God man in the flesh. He is a Son of God. He is also the Son of Man, and he is the Son of God, the God man in the flesh. So that's really why God had Noah's flood occur. A lot of people, they don't speak about this in church, and that's not by accident. And they don't speak about narcissism in the world today, and that's not by accident either, because the world system is run by the fallen system of the enemy, and they don't want you to catch on to this. This is more of a spiritual battle and a spiritual situation than it ever is psychological. Of course, it starts in spiritual first, because the spirit realm is what runs this realm, and everything happens in the spirit realm before it manifests in the flesh. Most people that know about biblical spirituality, even outside of that, know that that is true. I believe that the narcissist is a spiritual situation that ended up, of course, manifesting also as a psychological disorder, but it's really a spiritual disorder first and a psychological disorder, or simultaneously, but it still started in the spirit realm first. So anyway, I studied that for years. I studied clones, and I've been into all different types of conspiracies. So this is kind of a little background of who I am, where I came from. Also, what I do for a career is in certain topics of this type of discussion. I've done a lot of different things, though. I'm very eclectic. So getting back to the topic of discussion here, my unmasking of the narcissist. So this is kind of how it started. From there, I landed on this guy who spoke on narcissism from a spiritual point of view, and he had seen faces and stuff. Started to listen to all of his material, and he was speaking on breaking down different areas of how narcissists operate and everything. So I was, soaking that up, and it was kind of spot on for what I was dealing with, because they all run on tracks, and he was taking it from a spiritual point of view, which made total sense to me. Now, he wasn't a biblical guy. He didn't believe in God. He just believed Christ was an empath. But still, he was able to see, he had the situation that occurred, and he said he was out and about in the city, and he was being gang stalked, or he was being stalked by one individual. And so he got on the local bus or whatever, and that stalker got on the bus too. And they were at different places in the bus. Like, he was more toward the front, and the stalker was more toward the back. And he was giving him the dead and stare, like that narcissist dead and stare, that assassin stare, where if you catch them and they're stalking you, or they're looking at you with a stalking look, their eyes are just deadened and there's no life in it and they don't blink or anything and they're just looking at you. And you know it's not them, but the spiritual demonic entity that's inside them that's viewing you from a whole different point of view. And I've seen that a lot on my ex. So basically, he said that there was like these three rules that he went over in this video. This would never happen. You would never unmask a narcissist. And this is not to see, this is not like a mask slip where the personality behind the personality. This is like to see, take the face off and see demonic faces underneath, or for to manifest the spirit realm, to manifest in the physical form. And I was just fascinated by it. And he said that there was like these three rules. You could never unmask somebody in the home, for instance. It would have to be out and about in a public place. I don't know why, except for the energy would be different. And then he said that you would have to catch them from a diagonal view. And it made me wonder, I don't know how he came up with this, but you take a mask off from the side. So maybe, maybe that's why, because I don't know. This is the angle that I actually caught mine at. And then you'd have to lock eyes before they would catch you and lock eyes with you. And those were like the three rules that he had mentioned. And I was like, okay, whatever, I didn't know how I felt about that. I believed him because I had believed everything else. And it was because the other stuff was spot on. So he was somebody that I felt was credible and telling the truth because of everything else that he had spoke on was really on point about, what he had explained about narcissism was what I experienced, like legit firsthand. So then he went over what happened. He said the eyes got really, when he unmasked it, the eyes came out like this and they spun around and they were really big and they looked all goofy and the lips got fat, he said, and they making all these funny faces. But this guy, he's from another country, outside the United States, and um, he was speaking on it, and so it was a little different, from the wording, the description, so to speak, as somebody from America might describe it a little different than he did. But that was basically what he had said. And then, that was maybe the end of the video. That's basically what happened. And so probably a week later, I was out and about. I'm not going to say where it was, but I was somewhere. I don't want to out this person, but I was out somewhere and it was in a public place. And I was looking down and walking, and I happened to, you see like people's shoes and pant legs when you're walking, and I wasn't paying attention to that for a while, but then I actually saw something that looked like, I don't know, it just seemed like, it caught my eye. It was a female, and I saw the leg, the shoes and the leg and everything, and I started working my eyes up the person's individual's body, and I hadn't gotten to the face yet, but I was like, I recognize that person, and it happened to be my ex walking with her friend. And I got up, my eyes on her face, and then she turned, she didn't turn her head or anything. She turned her eyes to me or something. And by then, time stood still. Time stood still. And I think what happened was this, maybe the energy, like she was maybe wearing my energy. And this is where people will say that you have soul ties, is because and things that why you chase them or why you're addicted to them is because they took your energy, they took your fuel, and it's your soul fuel, your emotional fuel, your fuel of your mind and your soul. And because of that, you're attracted to this individual, and maybe because you want your soul pieces back and your energy back, and you're familiar with your energy. So when it's around, you'll see it, you'll look for it, and you'll search it out, and you'll be addicted to it. So it makes sense to me. So anyway, I caught her eyes before she caught mine, and time stood still. And all of a sudden, there was all people around, and all of a sudden, it was just me and her. And what happened first was her forehead went down, and it looked like that. And it almost seemed like at that particular moment, it was like this like Terminator type. It was more, I don't know, it seemed a little different than a human type head for a minute when it did this, like some sort of Terminator or something. And it went down like this, and golden eyes came out of here, y'all. Golden eyeballs. And it was like everything went dark. Golden eyes came out of here, and then it was almost like she had her eyeballs down here, and there was eyes up here that were just golden, y'all. just bright as can be. And then her face turned inky black, the whole face. Like there was still the profile of her face, but the whole inside became inky black. You couldn't see a nose or anything, but you just saw her eyeballs, and her eyeballs were just, like the white and discolor and everything. But it really shone forward because, and the golden eyes disappeared. And it just showed forward because it was just like all this was black around it. And her eyeballs were going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, like that. And it happened like she went back and forth with her eyeballs, like real fast, like I don't know. It's like they were just moving back and forth. Uh, like 8 times it was back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, maybe 4 times, 4 sets or something. And I'm just like stuck. And she's stuck. It's like she was she was walking with her friend. Her friend's right beside her. There's people all around, and it's like they're not even there anymore. I don't even know what was looking over here. It was just stopped. And the next thing that happened was her face came back, and then just like he had said, I swear to you, his eyes or her eyes came out like this, and they started spinning around, and it looked like a cartoon, y'all. The eyes were like this big. It was like some Looney Tune or something, and they started like going out and spinning, and then the lips got fat, like they were full of botulism, and they were. I remember hearing that sound. It was like, blah, 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 and it was just liquid, like fat, and these big lips, and it was just flowing over it like a volcano, like rolling over. It wasn't spitting, but it was like rolling over, and it was making that sound, blah, blah, and the lips were huge. It was almost like if you were to somehow get liquid fat like lit on fire or something, and it was just bubbling over, and it was just coming out, but it wouldn't go down here or anything. I guess it would stop at the chin or something. I don't know. It was weird. And then from there, uh, her face turned into that scream mask that's black and white from that movie from the late 90s. And they did several movies, like 3 or 4 movies series. That scream mask is an entity, or is what I saw. There's something completely real about that. And there's a whole crazy story about how that mask came about. If you look at how the director of that movie came up with that mask, he found it. And some small company supposedly made it. And it was kind of weird how he had to get the rights to it. Anyway, her face turned into that. And it started, you know how it looks like it's half melted? Well, it melted off of her face. And it looked just like that. And then from there, it flew off, and it was like it flew like a flag. This is how I would explain it, because I've been through some hurricanes. And if you ever seen a flag on a flagpole, like flying like 100 miles an hour, like, and it's about to rip off or something. Well, it melted off, and it flew like a flag flying 100 miles an hour into nothing, and it sounded like this. It went, and it went into nothing. And when I like followed it or whatever, it kind of like turned into like kind of like smoke or something, like a smoke and maybe some sparkles or something. And then I turned around and I looked at her, and everything was back to normal. And I shook my head like this, like I'm disgusted in you. And then I didn't know what to do. I wasn't scared or anything, but I looked at my phone, and then I turned around and walked the opposite way. And that's basically what happened as far as the experience goes. Now, after that, it took like 10 minutes to really understand what the heck just happened. And then as the next several days went on, I kind of like remembered it better. And this is what I found with stuff that happens to you that's spiritual. Because I've also had the Holy Spirit, when I got saved, I had the Holy Spirit give me 3 different times, 2 different times of scripture, and 1 to confirm my salvation, because I had well, anyway. And so I would get a voice that would speak in my head that was verbal, and it was like spiritual, and it was something that it would take me like 5 minutes to realize it happened. It's almost like there's a lag time with you having the understanding of a manifestation of something from the spirit realm. Like it takes time to process. I had dealt with that 3 times before with the Holy Ghost, which was amazing, because it almost like bringing you to tears. It's like God stopped the whole earth to say something to me, is what I feel. It's really precious. And it's a word that you need right then. And for me, I got 2 scriptures and then a confirmation 2 weeks after I got saved that I was saved, because I didn't want to be, I knew somebody that got saved, but they were always concerned whether they were saved or not. And I didn't want that to be. And so that was something that I wanted to be sure of. So God confirmed that even through a voice. And so that's what I learned about spiritual stuff. Now, the next thing that occurred was the next couple of months, I got stalked, gang stalked, or whatever you want to call it. It was like everywhere I went to any type of facility, I would have somebody staring a hole through me, and they wouldn't blink. It would be that dead assassin eye stare from a narcissist. It would be like, I mean, I don't even know how to explain it. I know if you guys have dealt with being stalked and seeing that face before, outside of this particular individual, I had never really dealt with that face before. But anyway, I would go to a restaurant or whatever. I would go to the gym, and I even smelt sulfur on a guy as well one day. And I have smelt the mildew smell that people talk about as well on people. But I smelt the sulfur, and it was so bad that I was looking around like, did somebody burn a bunch of matches? You know, it smelled like that rotten egg kind of smell. And I thought everybody else would be smelling it because they were all around me on these machines and stuff. And nobody was smelling it. And I know it was coming from the guy beside me, and he was acting all funky. I would even be with friends, and they would tell me, look, man, there's somebody at the end of the bar, or somebody at the end of around the other side of the restaurant, or somebody in Harris Teeter, or wherever, in the grocery store, anywhere. And they would be telling me that somebody is looking at us, and it is looking weird. And I'd already have seen it, because at this point I was starting to watch out for it. And somebody had asked, did I ever feel like going up to them and finding and getting more information or talking to the individual? And I didn't. I don't know why. I do know this. At some point in time, I started to get freaked out a little. I don't know why. I was prepared when the unmasking occurred. I just knew that I had power over it and that it couldn't affect me. I was awoke at that point. Like I said, I was listening to this guy's stuff and everything, and for it to happen just a week later, it was really crazy. But that's what happened. And then I started getting stalked. So I was at another place. I'm not going to say where it was either, because I don't want to out this individual, but somebody I actually knew for like 10 years. I mean, just as an acquaintance. I had ran into this person out and about, and it was at nighttime. And I caught this individual before they caught me. And when they turned, the same thing happened. They were a stalker. Apparently, they were being used as well. And their forehead came down like that, and the eyes came bright, just like this other one. And then I think that the whole thing would have happened again, but that's where it stopped, because this individual was walking past me. And then I never dealt with it again. But I was afraid I was going to be dealing with this for the rest of my life, y'all. And this kind of stuff will change your life, man. I mean, the stuff with the narcissist and all these experiences. And then my intuition had actually, when I started to get my intuition really on point, I was able to, I don't know if you guys can do this, but I was able to go back in different experiences I had, like our first date, and where I ran my intuition over, and I had forgotten all about it. But I do remember it when it had kind of sparked me to think about it again. In hindsight, I remembered our first date, and I got this feeling that the individual that I was on this first date with, that became this individual here, she was completely empty and soulless, and there was nothing in there, like an empty shell, and it was like evil. And I just, with the whole love bomb stuff, it just kind of was a feeling, and then it went away. And when I thought about it, when my intuition got on point, it jogged my memory back to that moment in time, and I remembered it. And I don't know, it was like I said, there's a spell around these individuals, and when you're susceptible to it and you're not awoke yet, you are very, very much susceptible. It's almost like nothing you can do until you get to the point in time where you get shook awoke, y'all. And then I also had one other thing. I had a relative. I got upset one time, and her eyes had turned completely black. She was so angry with me. I didn't even really do anything. It wasn't nothing a big deal, but she was so, I remember she was shaking, and she was staring at me, and she was pissed. And and her eyes were completely black. And I had kind of shut that out of my head, out of my mind. And that got jogged back to me as well when this whole thing had happened. And that happened several years ago, like before that time. So I guess I've seen those things. And when it comes to like the reptilian shapeshifting and the what people talk about in the world, not necessarily narcissism or the slit eyes, I have seen that. I've seen that in video footage and photos, but I've never seen that in real life. And the only other thing I dealt with really spiritual that was demonic was I I've heard a demon speak in a church one time, and I'll tell you, it freaked everybody out. It was the voice was to the level of something not from this dimension, y'all, and it was the worst, eeriest sounding voice I've ever heard in my life. And the pastor of the church asked it what it said, and it said something. He was talking about denominations, and then this demon person repeated it again, and it was something like, "We don't need to have any designer labels around here," or something like that. And he never did anything else. He just acknowledged, like, okay, and looked at that person like a good hardened stare, and then continued preaching. There was no like casting it out or anything. But yeah, so that's what happened. And a couple other small things I don't really want to go into detail about, but maybe at some point. But that's pretty much, I really didn't believe there was too many demonic entities out there, but after dealing with this, I realized that they're on a covert level and they don't show themselves like like you think they would. And then when you tell this individual what happened, I must have told this individual like 100 times, like what I saw on them, and you need to get deliverance or something. At the time I didn't know exactly that they can't really get delivered, and they act like nothing. Like, I don't know. It's almost like they just don't want to talk about it, but it's like they don't act like you would think you would be like, yo, if somebody said they saw demon faces on you and stuff, that you would flip out. You would want to either know more, and this is somebody that you would know they were not lying to you. You would want to know more, or you'd be freaked out and you'd never want to talk to them again and think they're crazy as hell. But this person was like, I don't want to talk about it. It was like, and then I brought up the imaginary friend thing because I had asked this individual, have you ever had an imaginary friend? And they got pissed after that. And then, you know, things kind of transpired, but I mean, like, ended. But I don't know what else to tell you, but I know it's spiritual. I mean, when you look at just the character of these individuals, that none of them could get any help, and they're the character of the Satan of the Bible, and they wear a mask. And everything evil wears a mask. I mean, they even talk about that the giants of old from Genesis 6 look like clowns. I mean, you can Google this. Um, and they have a mask on. Satan comes as an angel of light, masquerading. The narcissist is known for wearing a mask. Clowns wear a mask. And so did, it's just crazy. But anyway, that's my story. And that's kind of how it went down. So tell me what you think. I'd like to know y'all's opinion. Thanks for watching. Soul Judd, peace be out.